Samsung has launched a trio of new 2020 flagship phones at a big shiny San Francisco event. As expected, the Galaxy S20, S20 Plus and the new S20 Ultra were all whipped out on stage to show off the revamped camera hardware, refined design and upgraded specs. Now, Samsung was kind enough to let me fondle all three handsets ahead of the launch, so here's the full skinny on which of the new Samsung Galaxy S20 smartphones might be best for you. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, the first and most obvious difference between these three handsets is the size. The S20 is relatively compact for a phone these days at just 6.2 inches versus the 6.7 inch S20 Plus and the frankly Godzilla-sized 6.9 inch Ultra model. Thankfully though, all of Samsung's new flagships have seriously slender bezels surrounding those screens, and the S20 actually feels pleasingly easy to fondle with just the one hand. Meanwhile, the S20 Plus and the Ultra model are a big leap up in size with a proper heft to them as well. Definitely a two-handed job, so to speak. All of these Galaxy handsets sport near identical glass construction with glossy surfaces that love nothing more than to suck up grease from your fingers. And all three Samsung flagships are of course IP68 water and dust resistant as usual, so you can enjoy a nice spot of tick spurt while you're soaking in a lovely hot bubbly bath. Bliss. However, while the Galaxy S20 comes in pastel blue and pink hues as well as the more boring grey variant, the S20 Plus ditches that pink version for a goth-friendly black finish. I guess Samsung isn't expecting to sell many Plus models to the ladies. And meanwhile, the S20 Ultra model is even more goth-friendly with a troublesome choice of grey or black, although at least the prism effect means that you do get a burst of colour when the light catches that glossy surfacing. It's also worth noting that last year's Bixby button has been banished from all three S20 models, and more tragically, so has the headphone jack. So it's dongles or Bluetooth all the way. On the security front, no difference between this trio at all. You get an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor built into that lovely, gorgeous Dynamic AMOLED display, complete with a bit of face recognition to top it off. And there's no real difference at all as far as the software is concerned as well, as you'd kind of expect. You get the latest Android version 10 with Samsung's One UI version 2.0 slathered on top. So no matter your choice of Galaxy, you'll get fan favorites like a dark mode, full gesture controls, digital well-being shenanigans, and a one-handed mode as well. Definitely a relief if you opt for that 6.9 inch beast. Moving on to the display, again there's not really much difference between the S20, the S20 Plus and the S20 Ultra beyond the size of the thing. It's a dynamic AMOLED panel on all three handsets with Quad HD Plus visuals and a centrally positioned infinity or pinhole camera just like on the old Note 10 and the new Galaxy A series phones. All three panels are bright, punchy and frankly stunning for enjoying your movies and flicking through pics. All three of these AMOLED screens support a 120Hz refresh rate for a silky smooth everyday experience, although only in the full HD resolution. If you want a Quad HD resolution, then you'll have to stick it back down to a 60Hz refresh rate. And you also get a 240Hz touch response rate on this trio of Samsung's, which is great news if you're into your PUBG or Fortnite. And all three of Sammy's flagships are HDR10 Plus certified as well. Still no love for that Dolby Vision, sadly, boo. And there's bugger all difference between this trio when it comes to performance either, although the bigger models do come with more memory options. So no matter your choice of Galaxy S20 handset, you will get a 7nm octa-core Samsung Exynos chipset, at least if you are here in the UK. So you grab the standard Galaxy S20 that comes with 8 gigs of RAM, or you can throw a few more dollar bills at Samsung to get a 12GB model. The S20 Plus comes with 12 gigs as standard, as does the S20 Ultra, but again the S20 Ultra you can upgrade to a 16GB version. 16 gigs! That's more than most laptops have. That thing's got more RAM than the average sheep farm. The S20 and the S20 Plus also come with a 5G option if you want to again spend a bit more cash. So apparently with the Ultra that 5G support is mandatory. There is no LTE only alternative. On the battery front there is actually a pretty big gap between these three because of that size difference. You get a 4000 mAh cell in the S20, 4500 in the Plus and 5000 mAh in the Ultra. So hopefully you'll be able to make it through even a pretty intensive day with some juice remaining despite your choice. Although of course features like that 120Hz refresh rate will sap the power pretty sharpish. And of course don't forget that while the S20 Plus and the S20 Ultra have a larger capacity battery, they also have a much bigger AMOLED screen to power, so it'll probably end up being the battery life is more or less the same, maybe slightly better on those Plus and Ultra models. You'll have to wait for the full review to see the full skinny on that. As for the recharging tech, well it's Samsung's usual 15W fast charging, not quite a patch on some of the competition, but you do at least get 15W Qi wireless charging, and of course you've got that wireless power share as well. As for the storage, well the Galaxy S20 only comes in a 128 gigs flavor. Meanwhile, the Plus and the Ultra models also offer a 512GB version on top of that for a bit more cash naturally. And the good news is that all three of these smartphones support micro SD up to 1TB, so expansion is a piece of piddle. Now, one area where the Galaxy S20 Ultra really sets itself apart from the rest of its Samsung siblings is that camera tech. Samsung has gone all out for its 2020 flagships, chucking out most of last year's hardware and slapping on a huge camera chassis that dominates that arse end. But the biggest changes have definitely been reserved for that Ultra model. So the standard Galaxy S20 and S20 Plus both rock a 12MP primary lens alongside a 12MP ultra-wide angle lens and a fresh new 64MP telephoto lens which serves up a 3x optical zoom. Meanwhile, the S20 Plus also adds a fourth depth vision camera lens to that setup, which is basically a time-of-flight lens as found on the Note 10 Plus, handy for that live focus video mode which blurs out the background in real time as you're recording. Although that said, the standard Galaxy S20 still comes packing that live focus video mode despite the lack of depth vision cam. However, the Ultra really lives up to its name with some proper willy waving in the camera department. For one, the Ultra ditches that puny 12MP primary lens and replaces it with a Billy Big Bollocks 108MP shooter, just like Xiaomi's Mi Note 10. Besides that, you get the same 12MP ultra-wide angle lens as the other phones and that depth vision time-of-flight lens just like the Plus model. But the Ultra also changes up the telephoto lens to a 48MP shooter with a clever new folded design which boosts the optical zoom to a mighty 10x effort, beating out basically all of the current competition. Now when it comes to photos, the S20 and the S20 Plus can shoot up to 64MP snaps in that auto mode, although they will capture 12MP pics by default. In high resolution mode, the Ultra will capture a 108MP image. Or else instead you can activate Samsung's new smart camera system, which basically combines the information from 9 pixels into just one. And the main advantage of this is that you will get brighter photos in those low light conditions. As for the zoom stuff, well, you get a maximum 30x hybrid zoom with the S20 and that Plus model using a combination of optical and digital smart. And Samsung is rather dramatically calling this space zoom on the S20 phones, presumably because we'll all be able to take yet more pictures of the moon and post them up on Facebook like no one's ever seen the bloody moon before. The Ultra's version of space zoom absolutely smashes those other Galaxies though, topping off at a whopping 100x zoom thanks to that super sexed up telephoto lens. So presumably you won't just be able to shoot a picture of the moon, you'll actually be able to take photos of the clangers as they ponce about the place. Besides that though, you mostly get the same set of camera features on all three of these new Samsung flagships. So for instance, you've got the single take mode, which uses all of the cameras at once to capture video and photos, which are then gathered together so you can choose your favorite bits. You can capture video at a mighty 8K resolution now as well, and you can also screenshot 33MP photos from your video frames when you're viewing them back. There's a proper pro mode for your video now, so you can change the likes of the aperture level and so on, and then actually play around with the white balance as well as you're recording. There's also an improved super steady mode with even smoother results compared with the older S10 series, and you get a fresh new night hyperlapse mode too. As for that front-facing selfie snapper, well, both the S20 and the S20 Plus serve up a 10MP camera, while the Ultra model boosts this to an epic 40MP effort. Every sag and bag will definitely be on display if you shun the built-in beauty mode, so you have been warned. And if you want to, you can even shoot 4K resolution video at up to 60 frames per second using that front-facing camera on all three of these models. So that right there in a nutshell is how the S20, the S20 Plus and the S20 Ultra all compare. So which Samsung blower are you most tempted by, if any of them at all? I definitely personally really like the compact feel of the standard S20, which still packs plenty of smarts in there though. If you want to really upgrade to next gen camera hardware, then it looks like the Ultra is the way to go. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell, and check out my other Samsung Galaxy S20 video for all you need to know, including an in-depth detailed breakdown of that S20 Ultra's camera tech. Cheers everyone, love you!